Terrorist group Al-Shabaab strikes again in Kenya, this time killing 12 people at a guest house. How will health experts cope with a shortage of polio vaccines? And toy companies break down barriers to be more inclusive. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, an extremist attack in East Africa targeting non-Muslims has killed at least 12 people Tuesday at a guest house along Kenya's northeast border with Somalia. The Mandera County commander says the Somali-based militant group Al-Shabaab attacked the Bisharo guest house that hosts out-of-towners with grenades and IEDs. Al-Shabaab immediately claimed responsibility for the attack in a message posted on its Telegram messaging channel. The group says the attack targeted Christian workers. Well, 6 people were killed earlier this month in a similar attack on visitors in Mandera when suspected Al-Shabaab militants struck a residential housing area. And for more details on today's assault, journalist Ado Juba joins us by phone from Garissa in Kenya. Hello, Juba. Ado.
Yes, Vincent.
Yes, now can you tell us a little more about the victims of this attack?
Yes, Vincent. Today morning at 3 a.m. local time, suspected Somali-based militiamen attacked against a house in the center of Mandera, and they used explosives and hand grenades to access the building, and later they started shooting randomly at those people who are staying inside the guest house. And they killed, at least according to government officials, a lot of people.
Now, who are they? We're told that some of these were students, right?
Yes, and these were mainly people who came from outside the region. These were people of a Christian faith, and they were separate people. Some of them were people who do quarry work, but majority were students who came to do a theater work for schools. So, as you know, in schools there are some plays which are really examinable at the secondary level. So this theater group, they came to perform to act the play, so that the local students can digest what the play means ahead of the examination. So actually, they came yesterday morning from Nairobi, and unfortunately, 2 of them were among those who were killed. There were 10 in number, the theater group, who come from various universities, local universities. But luckily, 8 escaped, 2 of them were killed.
Ado, you know that there are always threats from Al-Shabaab in that region. With this kind of reality, did the government provide any security to these visiting students and other people?
Yes, security, really, there's a visible presence of security everywhere. And in fact, many people are asking who the attackers were. And this is a question today we have been, speculated by the government. They said most of these attackers could be people who are local militiamen or gangs who are sympathizers to Islamists. So the local and regional coordinator, Mahmoud Saleh, have really said they don't believe these were people who crossed from the border, but they are gangs who are living within Mandera and who are sympathizers to Islamists.
Thank you. Ado, thank you very much. That's a journalist, Ado Jubat, reporting by phone from Garissa in Kenya. Well, in neighboring Somalia, hundreds of fighters have left the terrorist group Al-Shabaab since 2013, and some of them are getting a chance at a fresh start thanks to a UN-backed rehabilitation program. The goal is to help them reintegrate into society. Jason Patinkin has the story from Baidoa.
It's a common scene in Somalia, but this football game in a fortified compound in Baidoa town is different. The players are all former members of the al-Qaeda affiliate in Somalia, Al-Shabaab. They defected and were selected for rehabilitation instead of jail time. There are 160 men enrolled here now. This young man joined Al-Shabaab after Ethiopian troops fighting the militant group in Somalia killed his father. He left Al-Shabaab 6 years later Sickened by the group's infighting and attacks on civilians, he asked VOA not to use his name as he continues to receive threatening phone calls from al-Shabaab.
I have lost 6 years. The people who I was with in high school, they are in university. They are in the town, and if you see them, they are hopeful. Before I get to 30, I hope to catch up with them.
At the center, former combatants take literacy, life skills, and religion classes. They develop business plans funded by the center to support themselves after graduation. But their past is never far away.
Absolutely, I cannot go to where al-Shabaab are, and if I go into the town, the community might not feel safe. So the best thing is just to stay here at the center, and just to accept the situation until time goes by, and the community becomes more enlightened about who we are.
The rehabilitation process takes time, as some former fighters maintain extremist beliefs. For safety, this Islamic teacher at the center asked VOA not to use his name.
Some of them will argue with you. So we will say to them, okay, if you believe in this and we believe in that, let's sit down with the Holy Quran and the Hadith, and you do your research. And if your interpretation is correct, we go with this. If mine is correct, we go with that. Because we are Muslims, we have to debate in a constructive way.
So far, no graduates from Baidoa have rejoined al-Shabaab, according to the center's managers, but the process is far from perfect. There's confusion over how defectors are selected for rehab versus jail, and local residents ask why former terrorists get all this support and they don't. But Patrick Lutz, who designs the program, says the rehabilitation center remains vital.
This has created some kind of reassurance to some groups in al-Shabaab to start reaching out to the current government and say, let's talk a peace deal. And they have directly connected to this program. So this is much bigger than we think. And I believe that even though it's a drop in the ocean, it's a drop in the ocean with the right people.
And for participants, the rehab center offers hope of a second chance. Jason Pitsinkin for VOA News in Baidoa, Somalia.
On to Europe now. French workers using sledgehammers started dismantling the migrant camp known as the Jungle on Tuesday. The demolition of the camp was scheduled to take place as part of government plans to clear it. The camp had been home to over 6,000 people, most of them hoping to reach Britain, just a short distance across the sea. The French government has been busing the people to resettlement centers elsewhere in France. Several teams of social workers, accompanied by translators sent by the government, toured the camp earlier Tuesday, handing out leaflets to convince migrants they need to prepare to leave the camp. Now, for the latest on the tearing down of the Calais camp, journalist Lisa Bryant joins me live via Skype from Paris. Good evening, Elizabeth.
Hi, Vincent.
Yes. Now, there were concerns that some people were planning actually to hold out somewhere in the neighborhood of that area and come back. Is it clear now that most of them have left Calais?
No, it's not at all clear. Actually, the government has probably basically bussed out maybe more than a third by now. That is a huge chunk yesterday, and then hundreds more today. So maybe 2,300, more than 2,300 yesterday. But remember, there are about up to 8,000 migrants in the camp. So the workers are beginning to clear out, as you said, but there's still many migrants left.
Now, they're being taken to different parts of France. Some have complained that perhaps some of the places they're being taken are just, perhaps there's nothing there. What are the plans on the ground just to make sure that their needs are taken care of?
Well, the government has promised that they are going to have some real shelters that they haven't had in the jungle. I mean, this is the migrant camp that, just think about it, it is just muddy roads, not many hygienic facilities like toilets. So these new shelters are equipped with toilets. They have heating. The thing is that these are places where the migrants are going to be encouraged to apply for asylum. And those that don't get asylum may be sent home. That's what the government says.
Some French officials are also complaining that Britain needed to take more of these people because in the first place, that's where they wanted to go. What has been the response there?
This has been a long-standing issue between France and Britain. The big issue at the moment are the children. And so far, about 200 children have been sent to Britain. Britain has accepted them. And now the British Home Secretary says that several hundred more will be accepted as well. These are young children who may have ties there, family ties, etc. But there are still hundreds more children in Calais. And so that's yet another problem in terms of clearing this camp.
Very quickly, what's the timeline for destroying completely that camp?
Well, the government says that it will destroy it by the end of the week. There are questions over that. And then the bigger question is, will new migrants or old migrants return, especially since some appear to be holding out, as you said, and not wanting to leave?
We'll watch for that. Lisa, thank you very much, as always.
Thanks, Vincent.
Well, that's Lisa Bryant reporting live via Skype from Paris in France. Now, the Islamic State is claiming responsibility for a suicide attack that targeted a police training center in southwestern Pakistan, killing at least 61 recruits and wounding more than 120 others. Pakistani officials say the assault occurred when several heavily armed suicide bombers stormed the facility in the southwestern city of Quetta. The attack began just before midnight on Monday, with assailants entering the hostel for recruits inside the complex and spraying occupants with bullets. The perpetrators quickly seized a number of hostages before Pakistani troops and commando units surrounded and entered the facility to battle the gunmen, which lasted several hours. A provincial official says 2 attackers blew themselves up, while a third was gunned down in the exchange of fire with security forces. Now the siege ended just before dawn on Tuesday. Well, if the race for the White House, in-person early voting for the U.S. presidential election is underway in several states. Polling stations opened Monday in Texas and Florida, 2 of the biggest states in America, both of which Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump are eager to win due to their large number of electoral votes. Early voting also began in Alaska, Arkansas, and Massachusetts. 21 states and the District of Columbia offer some in-person early voting, while many others allow absentee mail-in voting without having to provide an excuse for not being able to come to the polls. Well, in addition to electing the next U.S. president, Americans are also casting ballots for local and state officials. VOA's Zlatitsa Hoke reports that the record number of voters is expected to vote early this year.
The current presidential campaign has been one of the longest and most contentious in recent history. Some voters were eager to cast their ballots early so they can stop worrying about it.
I'm going to cast my ballot the way I want to do it, and then I'm not going to let myself feel the pressure anymore, and I'm not going to worry anymore because I will have done everything I can do.
I'm very anxious to vote. Very, very anxious.
Perhaps that was the reason for exceptionally long lines at many polling stations on Monday. Some early voters in Houston, Texas did not expect that.
Looks like we should have got up at about 5 o'clock this morning.
I would say that there's going to be a bigger turnout than we would think.
But even as voters stood in line, the political pressure continued relentlessly. In Texas, U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a Democrat, hoped to sway more Republican voters to switch sides.
It is a vote for America's destiny and her future. And I am proud of the women that are running for judges and district attorney.
Texas is traditionally a Republican state, but this time the gap between Democratic and Republican candidates is so narrow that there is hope for Hillary Clinton to win a historic victory in the southwestern state. Clinton's vice presidential nominee Tim Kaine visited early voters in Florida.
If we win Florida, we're going to win. I mean, can I just tell you that? That is the gospel truth.
Republican candidate Donald Trump also is aware of the importance of winning in the swing state of Florida. Speaking to supporters there Monday, he said the polls showing him behind Clinton are false.
It's a heavily weighted poll with Democrats, like the ABC phony poll that just came out, totally phony poll. But the polls that mean something, the polls that where they really have been accurate over the years, we're leading by 2 nationally.
Meantime, Clinton has switched her attention from Trump to support Democratic candidates running for Congress, which is currently dominated by Republicans. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vincent Makori. Now coming up, a possible solution for the worldwide polio vaccine shortage. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Well, it's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Leno Mudu with some new details on polio vaccines. Leno.
Well, polio eradication partners and activists celebrated the successes of the global fight against polio on Monday, World Polio Day. They also asked for additional support needed to wipe out the disease for good. Since 1985, efforts by the Global Polio Eradication Initiative has brought the world the closest it has ever been to ending polio, with 21 wild polio cases so far in 2016. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization's strategic advisory group of experts say 2 companies making vaccines are failing to produce enough vaccines, so many countries should prepare to give lower doses to make stocks last. Polio is a contagious, crippling, and potentially fatal infectious disease that mainly affects children under 5. There is no cure, but it can be prevented through immunization. Joining us live via Skype from Atlanta, Georgia, is Dr. John Verfoy, Polio Eradication Branch Chief with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. Verfoy, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Leonard. It's a pleasure to be here.
First of all, World Polio Day was yesterday. What is the main takeaway from that commemoration?
I think the main takeaway from yesterday's celebration was just a sense of optimism and commitment. We've never been closer to eradicating polio. The opportunities to interrupt global transmission in the coming year are enormous, and there was just a sense of a continued commitment and push forward to finish this job that we started.
Now, polio vaccine is what is the solution so far to preventing the spread of polio. And the panel of experts, WHO's experts, recommend that the dosage be lowered. What is the take? What does this mean for the global fight?
Thanks for asking that. So there are actually 2 main types of vaccines that are used to fight polio. The first is oral polio vaccine, which contains weakened live virus, and that's the primary way that we move to interrupt polio globally. As part of the end game for polio eradication, though, we want to remove that live vaccine and make sure that every country has introduced inactivated polio vaccine, or IPV. And so the reference from SAGE was related to, as we ramped up the distribution of IPV, now about 80% of the world's population or birth cohort is covered by that vaccine each year. However, the production delays have resulted in slower supplies than we would like, or lower supplies than we would like in that regard. And so what they're recommending is actually that countries consider the use of fractional doses of that IPV as the production continues to expand. Science has shown shown that if you use 2 fractional doses, you can actually get better immunity than if you use a single dose of intramuscular IPV in a child.
Okay, and quickly, let's talk about Africa. We saw that what happened with Nigeria. A couple of cases were found, 3 cases exactly a couple of months ago. What does this mean? Where do we stand in terms of Africa getting rid of polio?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the identification of cases in Borno State of northeast Nigeria was a setback. But I think that setback really needs to be taken in the context of the larger achievements of that national program to reduce the amount of polio that it has, and also in the context of the rest of the continent and the globe. In 2012, Nigeria had more than 50% of the polio virus in the world, and it, through a very consistent and concerted effort, reduced that and limited it to this one state that, as you know, has had a problem with the Boko Haram insurgency that has really restricted access to individuals. So I think that now that we're seeing, as the humanitarian crisis unfolds and as access has increased in recent months, we're seeing that these previously isolated populations are beginning to mix, and we picked up these cases. And so there's a very large global effort from all the partners and from the government, led by the government of Nigeria, as well as the surrounding countries in that region, to really vaccinate many individuals very quickly.
Dr. Verofoy, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us from the CDC headquarters.
Thank you so much.
And that was Dr. John Verofoy. He's Polio Eradication Branch Chief with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Now, the United Nations says the number of tuberculosis infections drastically increased over the past year, and doctors know at least 4 million people with TB are not being treated at all. VOA's Carol Pearson reports.
A simple cough can spread a number of deadly diseases, including tuberculosis.
TB is the threat that can be spread by an aerosolized spread, by not a behavior that increases your risk, but by standing behind somebody in line who coughs and infects you with the mycobacterium. No high-risk behavior associated with it other than wrong place at the wrong time.
In a Skype interview, Dr. Eric Gooseby explained that TB kills about 5,000 people a day, yet it doesn't have to be so deadly.
We can diagnose it. We can treat it with effective antimycobacterial drugs and cure it in about 90% of cases with the current drugs that are available.
Yet tuberculosis is considered a disease of the past in many developed countries, and budgets to fight it have been slashed. TB has been vastly undercounted in countries like India, where it's prevalent. Elsewhere, health budgets and medical workers have focused on fighting Zika, Ebola, and other emerging diseases, while TB has been ignored. And that's what has Dr. Gooseby concerned.
Our political will has waned, and it has been deprioritized in ministries of health as the urgent emergent disease to respond to. And as a result, we see TB beginning to increase in the number of deaths it's causing. We are now at a death rate of 1.8 million a year, which puts TB as the #1 infectious disease killer on the planet.
TB thrives in crowded areas where people lack enough food and good sanitation, which makes them susceptible to disease. But as the world learned with Ebola, it's not just a disease of the poor. Travel took Ebola around the world. It can do the same with TB. That's why the United Nations is trying to refocus the world's attention on tuberculosis. If all countries, rich and poor, cooperate, TB infections can be stopped. The goal is to end the disease by 2030. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
That's our health report for today. So stay in touch. Find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Linor. I'll be sure to watch Linor Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Just in time for Christmas, diversity sweeps into the toy aisle. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. A bomb blast at a guest house in northeast Kenya kills at least 12 people in an attack claimed by Al-Shabaab militants. In Niger, the Interior Minister Bazoum Mohamed visits a Malian refugee camp still healing from a jihadist attack earlier this month that resulted in the deaths of 22 soldiers. Nearly 100 Ethiopians turned their departure from the Calais migrant camp into protests against persecutions in their country. In South Africa, 2 trains collide near Johannesburg, leaving 1 person dead and 122 people injured. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
You're with Africa 54. Welcome back. I'm Hayley Adams Fitzpatrick. Here's what's trending. With Christmas around the corner, toy manufacturers are thinking outside the box. Parents beware. There'll be lots more options this holiday season, especially for kids looking for toys that look like them. One example, Barbies, with greater variety of body types, eye color, and facial structures. Inclusiveness also means dolls with special needs. US-based retailer Toys R Us carries an exclusive line called Journey Girls that includes a wheelchair and crutch set. You'll also find coding toys, robots, and circuit builder sets aimed at both girls and boys. Well, speaking of parents and their young ones, they were all out in force at the baby show in London this week. One of the most head-turning strollers at the show is the GB Pocket, which has recently been awarded a Guinness World Record for the smallest folded stroller. While carriages and strollers are always big attractions, the biggest trend this year, high chairs. On offer are a wider range of high chairs suitable for all home and apartment sizes, whatever your decorating style. The rise of the high-end designer high chair is driven largely by interior design and parents wanting baby furniture that complements their home decor, which means functional and fabulous. Just wait till that baby starts crawling. And finally, scientists in Costa Rica are developing a mobile application that allows you to identify a plant species by using your smartphone. The app lets you take a picture of, say, a leaf with your mobile phone and obtain information about that species. The first step is taking pictures of the leaves. That information is then compiled into a database. The images are processed and relevant features are extracted to develop computer vision algorithms. Scientists hope over the long term this technique will be used to identify flowers and seeds. And that is what is trending this Tuesday. Vincent, it's back to you.
Thank you, and that's our show for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
I am Jacques Aristide from Washington Forum. This is VOA. Follow us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Washington Forum.
Welcome to English in a Minute. You have probably heard of to-do lists. When going to a store, you might make a shopping list. But what is a bucket list? Let's listen as Jonathan and Anna explain.
Bucket list.
Guess what I'm finally doing this weekend? Skydiving.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, it's been on my bucket list for years, so I'm finally going to do it.
I have a few things on my bucket list too, but jumping out of a plane is not one of them.
A bucket list is a list of things you want to do before you die. You can put anything on your bucket list. Writing a book, traveling overseas, or in that daredevil Anna's case, skydiving. And that's English in a Minute.